If you think you know enough about value gaps, then take a look at those three types of fair value gaps. Are they the same? If you think so, then make sure to watch the video because you will learn a lot and explain, because they're really not. Not all fair value gaps are the same, and each one can tell you a different story. Let's get into the video. So a lot of people claim that they know enough about fair value gaps and they know fair value this and that, but in reality, they don't know nothing about this key three-candle pattern. Everyone knows this. From this candle all the way to this candle, from the first to the third, we have a gap where the wicks do not overlap. And that's something that is very clear and almost everyone knows about. However, what we're going to be doing today is focusing on the third candle of the fair value gap. A lot of people don't know this, but the third candle actually tells you a big story about what's going to happen. It's going to actually answer a lot of questions about, for example, when price retraces back to the fair value gap, will the fair value gap hold, or how will be the reaction of the fair value gap be? All those questions will be answered by one specific candle. It's going to be the third candle of the fair value gap. Now, starting with this, a very significant pattern of a fair value gap is, however, it happens not only always, but I want to stay away from it, okay? Because if you trade a specific type of FVG, you know that the probability of price failing is going to be much lower than you normally fair value gap. So watch the first one. So it's when we have, for example, a big candle with a displacement. However, just focus on the third candle. What do we see here? This was the first, this is the second going up, and then the third candle creating this fair value gap. Now the question is, think about it with me, why did this fair value gap was not filled? And even when it is happening, knew that it's not going to be filled, only for one reason. You see the third candle, the wick of the third candle, how does it look? Price rejecting to the upside, creating a hammer. Price closed above 3/3 of the candle, creating and a rejection happening. So there's already a lot of buy momentum to the upside, and there's no time for price to come lower all the way to the fair value to reprice it. Price does not have time to do that. The market did not have time to do that. However, if we go to the lower time frame, you're going to have another picture. So going, for example, to 1 hour. Well, let's start with 5 minutes, right? So you're going to go for 5 minutes. We're going to see one thing here. This was the fair value gap here. What happened on that wick was actually price coming to the fair value gaps of the lower time frame, sweeping liquidity and going up, and this is where the rejection happened. So a lot of the time when you have a fair value gap on a specific time frame where the third candle of the fair value gap already rejected it with a high momentum to the upside and then closed above in a bullish way, then we expect this fair value gap not to be filled, most likely. So that's the situation here. Now if we go to 1 hour, it's going to be more clear. What happened is that we have another fair value gap on 1 hour that was already filled. So what's the point of filling that 1 hour fair value gap again? Like the reaction of this, of the rejection of this candle was pretty much a mitigation of the fair value gap, and then we started going on. So 25% of it done. 25%. No, a lot of the time we're going to know that probability of the fair value gap will be filled when there's already a rejection and the momentum to the. That doesn't mean that doesn't happen. So for example, switch back to the 4 hour, we can see that, okay, this did not get filled, right? However, if we have another point, for example, this one, we had a big sell-off here and then big rejection, leaving a fair value gap here. It was filled. However, what is the difference between this fill of a value gap and this one? There's a difference. You see, this one took less time, the price to come to the fair value gap. This one, on the other hand, took much more longer for the price to come to the fair value gap. And you're going to notice that when we have that big rejection of the third candle, it's going to take more time for price to come to that fair value gap than reprice it. That's a rule of thumb. And also this example here, what happened here? After this price here, you see the speed of price coming to this fair value gap immediately at the next candle, and then another time after 3 candles. However, this one, where we had the big wick, if we go to the lower time frame, we're going to see only one thing. There, exactly. Let me put it on another color. So green, and go to the 15-minute. We're going to notice is that on the red one, where the rejection happened, it was really nothing but a lower time frame fair value gap. It got filled over and repriced. So this is not going to get filled immediately, at least right, or the probability is lower. So we have a lower fair value gap on the lower time frame, and this is why the rejection already happened, starting lower. So taking it back again to the 4 hour, we're going to see that it took, this is the fair value gap, almost until pairs 11 candles. So 4 hours, 11 candles, that's 3 days, almost 4 days of price action. However, on the other hand, when we, this fair value gap, so after 1 candle to 4 candles, so there's quite some difference. So rule of thumb, when we have a big rejection already, it's going to tell us that there was already a rejection on the lower time frame. There was a mitigation of another fair value gap on the lower time frame. And it's going to also tell us that it's going to take longer for this fair value gap to be filled. So expect to wait more, or it's not going to be filled. Now, talking about this fair value gap specifically, you see how it was filled? Take a look at the left. We're going to see a lot of these examples. You see, we have one fair value gap here on the 4 hour that was filled almost immediately after it was created, filled, boom, and dropped to the and this happened a lot of times. We got also a fair value gap here where it gets respected immediately, 50%, and it goes up. How do I know which one is going to get filled, which one is not going to get filled immediately? Now we know that there's a specific time based on the 3 candles that really doesn't get filled immediately. Now, take some notes. The smaller the third candle is, the higher probability for the fair value gap to get filled, and the faster it is. On the other hand, the bigger the candle on the opposite side is, the lower probability for the fair value gap to hold. That's one thing that you need to understand. What does that mean? Look at this. Consider this as a fair value gap here. 3 candles. All the focus again on the third candle. So whatever I said before, this is the explanation, right? So when we have a smaller third candle then we're expecting the fair value gap to be filled. So to be filled faster. And why? Because now this is a smaller candle, especially if it has also a smaller wick, then we might just see manipulation below in order to go to the main drawing liquidity, right? So this is what we think is going to happen. Now let's imagine that this is, on the other hand, has again price going up, and there is already a rejection that already happened here. And this is my fair value gap now. What do I think is going to happen? No, I'm not expecting an immediate rebalance of the fair value gap. Take a look at this again. So we discussed the high probability one, which is we have a small candle, third candle, and without rejection, not a big rejection, and we have a main draw on liquidity above. So we know that, okay, price needs to go there. What is the perfect scenario price to do? It's to come lower to the fair value gap and go back up. So this is going to hit the main draw liquidity. So this is high probability one. On the other hand, a low probability one. Let's imagine that this is a bullish candle, and again, this one here is let's say this is a bullish candle, and this one this open here and then start going bearish, and then it has a huge momentum to the lower side, leaving this fair value gap. So this is a big mistake you're making if you're still entering from this fair value gap. It could work, yes. Everything could work because probability still plays off, but this is a very low probability that this will happen, because you already see the momentum of this candle is already huge to the lower side. So we're not trusting this fair value gap no more. It could be just the price going lower and respecting this fair value gap like this. Another bearish candle going to the lower side. So when we have the third candle, even though a pattern, still a fair value gap is again still trading, but after this video you'll know that a candle that looks like this with a huge candle to the upside and then another one directly repricing it, almost engulfing it. It didn't engulfing it, but almost engulfing it, and leaving just a small fair value gap there. That doesn't mean that it's going to hold up. Actually, it's the lower probability for this fair value gap to hold. So this is a very low probability. On the other hand, if we have something like this and a smaller body and a smaller wick, then expect this to be an immediate fill and to go up. Right, we're going to have a market maker model, and it's because this is going to have a bigger market maker model. So Forex chart, back to 4 hours, maybe. Maybe we can go to the New Zealand dollar here, and maybe we can go. So we're starting with this one. We see not a huge one, but a significant one compared to the others happening on the fair value gap here. And what do we notice there? The price did not fill this fair value gap until immediately. Only and it was respected later. It took a lot of time. 38, 9 hours. On the other hand, this is only a 50-minute time frame. Then on the other hand, if we take a look at that other fair value gap, for example, if we go take a look at this, this is another fair value gap created after a liquidity sweep. But what we notice here, an immediate retest of this fair value gap, an attempt of repricing it. So do you notice how big the wick of this candle is? Very small wick, and price already bearish into the fair value gap. Not a huge momentum, but that doesn't even happen always. This only happens using a lower time frame. However, using a higher time frame doesn't happen a lot. Either it's leaving a wick or it's not creating a fair value gap at all. Just make sure that if you see something like in this case, then ignore entering. Yeah? You see here an immediate reaction of the fair value gap and then going to the upside. So if we go when it has looking at a fair value gap that has a small wick, price only fills that fair value gap immediately, especially if this third candle doesn't go bullish, right? So if the third candle is going like this, one, and then going up, and then the third candle determines the fair value gap or not. So however, third candle goes like this. There we go. Bearish in this case. Now, the probability of this fair value gap to be filled is higher and faster, unlike if we have just a bullish candle above to the upside, because the retracement, this candle itself, it tells you that, okay, we're going to go faster, but if we retrace it back to the downside, it means, okay, we're planning to retrace it and get a fair value gap to go up. So we're really, just the third candle tells you that whole story. Even if you're going to continue up or down or retrace down, and how long it's going to take. Now take a look at this example. Another fair value gap here. Third candle on this case in a bullish fair value gap pattern. The third candle is being bearish. So with a small wick right here. And what do we expect now? An immediate rebalance of this fair value gap. And this is what happened here. Price directly came in and going up. Took a look at any fair value gap. There's this one, small body, immediately on the next candle is repriced and rebalanced. So when I say this, for example, bullish fair value gap, however, the third candle was bullish, unlike this one where it was bearish. But what does that tell us? It's an indication that it's either the fair value gap is not going to be filled immediately, or it's going to take longer, or we might just push up without coming back to that fair value gap at all, especially if you create another fair value gap above it. In this case, price came to that fair value gap, but not, only slightly coming here and quite some time afterwards. Price only came here, started going up, and always this one did not fill that fair value gap initially. Take some time for it to come to it too. Immediately it rebalance here, and this happens over and over. You'll have the same scenario goes on and on. And now here, discussing this bearish fair value gap. On the other hand, what do we notice? Third candle. What's the color? So it's bearish. So it was a displacement candle, also closing below. So that's a breakaway gap. So this market structure shift. So they expect this one. This one had a huge candle on the lower side, creating also another fair value gap. Now, this is really hard for it to be filled, or it's going to take longer for this fair value gap to be filled. On the other hand, price created another fair value gap. Why, even though we have a bullish hammer, why this fair value gap is not going to be filled immediately? Well, only for one reason, and was that we had this big retracement already. So price already retraced on the lower time frame and started going lower. So there was already bearish momentum going on, and left the previous one aside. So we don't expect that to be filled. Now, this one could be filled, but there's a rejection, but it's not too big. If we go deep into this at a lower time frame, for example, 1 minute, we're going to notice that price actually came to the fair value gap and completely repriced it. the existing imbalance. So that's good. Some market price correction. So it's more clear when you go to the lower time frame, just to really see what happens into a lower time frame fair value gap instead of going into that 15-minute fair value gap on a higher time frame. So that's the difference. You can actually just use the third candle or the fair value gap, and you can expect when a fair value gap is going to be filled, expecting a fair value gap is going to be respected, and so many questions that we answered today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you do, make sure that you give us a thumbs up and recommend some ideas for the videos and share this with your friends. Cheers, guys.